You're watching live from Paris here on France 24. Glad you could join us. I'm Haxie Myers-Belkin. These are the day's top headlines. Donald Trump returns to the campaign trail in Florida as he insists he's now immune to COVID-19. His doctor, however, refusing to confirm whether or not the US president is now testing negative for the virus. Amid soaring rates of infection, Toulouse and Montpellier become the latest French cities to be designated the maximum COVID alert level, with bars and cafes ordered to close for 2 weeks as of Tuesday. And the EU urges Armenia and Azerbaijan to respect a Russia-brokered ceasefire, as each side accuses the other of intensification of shelling of civilian areas. We'll be getting the latest from our correspondent in Azerbaijan's second largest city, where a missile recently hit a residential area. It's good to have you with us. Also coming up in the programme here in France, it's Octobre Rose, Pink October, a month dedicated to raising awareness of breast cancer. This year, more than ever, doctors are urging women to check themselves regularly amid fears the coronavirus has made people wary of seeking help. And also coming up, Rafael Nadal finally catches up to close friend and rival Roger Federer with 20 career Grand Slams after winning his 13th French Open. We'll be getting the latest reactions in our international press review. Trump fans in Florida are gearing up for an in-person rally by the president, the event marking Donald Trump's return to the campaign trail a week and a half after he confirmed he'd tested positive for COVID-19. Trump's official doctor has said that the president is no longer infectious, but did not say whether or not the president was now testing negative for the virus. A little earlier, we spoke to our Washington correspondent, Ketavan Gorjastani.
The President of the United States trying to make up for all the time he lost while he was sidelined by that COVID-19 virus for about 10 days. Now that he's back on track and cleared, as he said, by his doctor to be back in public and in contact with people, he is going all out on the campaign trail. 4 days, 4 different rallies in 4 different states. He's starting this Monday with Florida, Tuesday in Pennsylvania, Wednesday in Iowa, and a Thursday in North Carolina. What do these states have in common? Well, they're all battleground states, and battleground states where Donald Trump is trailing Joe Biden. Now, the margins are much different, whether you're looking at Pennsylvania, for example, where Joe Biden's lead seems to be growing and is now pretty comfortable, or Florida, where it's still pretty much a toss-up, just like in Iowa. But they are battleground states that the president won back in 2016, and he's looking like he could potentially lose this time around. So that's why the president and his campaign are focusing on these very important states. And of course, if you look at the national picture, the average in the pollings showing that Joe Biden's lead keeps on growing. It's past now the double-digit marks. The average polling, the most recent one, putting Joe Biden up by about 12 points ahead of the President of the United States.
This Monday, the US Senate is set to push ahead with confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett. The 48-year-old judge, a federal appeals court judge rather, is a staunch conservative, and her appointment would swing the ideological balance of the top court in the land firmly to the right. With just over 3 weeks to go before the US presidential election, and with Supreme Court justices appointed for life, Democrats have called the nomination a reprehensible power grab. The Liverpool City region is bracing for sweeping new COVID-19 measures as the UK implements a new 3-tier COVID alert system. Under the strictest measures, pubs, bars, casinos and gyms will be ordered to close, with the measures up for review after 1 month. Liverpool looking set to be the only city placed in that top alert category. In the week ending on the 6th of October, Liverpool recorded 600 cases for every 100,000 people, while the average for England was just 74. As of this Tuesday, 2 more French cities, Toulouse and Montpellier, will be placed on the country's highest coronavirus alert level, joining Paris, Marseille and 4 others. The move means a host of new restrictions, including the closure of bars, cafes and gyms. Over the weekend, dozens of top athletes and doctors joined forces to demand the reopening of gyms in the country's hardest-hit regions, saying they've been singled out for unfair treatment. Karis Garland reports.
Defending what they call a stigmatised sector, some of France's most prominent sports figures joined the call for the reopening of gyms across the country in newspaper Le Journal du Dimanche.
The benefits of physical activity on the health of the French people are unquestioned and undisputed. Today we solemnly request the public authorities to reopen all the establishments, request targeted economic support to sustain companies and sports associations with an alarming loss of attendance.
For retired athlete Stéphane Diagana, the closures are unwarranted.
Je crois qu'il faut faire preuve de discernement parce qu'aujourd'hui, on met à l'arrêt des millions de personnes qui ont pris des bonnes résolutions pour pratiquer une activité physique et on sait à quel point c'est un enjeu de santé publique.
The signatories say gyms have never been declared the centre of an outbreak and authorities need to recognise the strict protocols put in place in establishments like this one in Rouen, where management moved the gym's equipment into the open-air car park.
Donc on est en plein courant d'air. Alors c'est probablement pas le meilleur endroit pour faire du sport quand il fait froid, mais c'est le meilleur aujourd'hui dans les conditions sanitaires dans lesquelles on est et dans les conditions de réglementation dans lesquelles on est.
Doctors also signed the article, saying they're worried French people will become more sedentary. For gyms, it's a question of survival after months of closure during lockdown. According to unions, more than 2,000 sports facilities could be forced to shut their doors permanently.
The ongoing fighting over the Nagorno-Karabakh region is continuing, the truce, weakening yet further, with each side accusing the other of shelling both military and civilian targets. On Sunday, Azerbaijan saying that shelling by Armenian forces in the city of Ganja had left at least 9 people dead and 33 wounded. Well, for more on this, we can cross live now to the city to speak with Catherine Norris-Trent, who is in Ganja. Catherine, what exactly have you been seeing over this weekend?
On Sunday, we went to the scene of the bombing where authorities took us after saying there'd been a strike on a residential area overnight. And we got there and we saw for ourselves the rescue teams and the army still hunting for bodies and pulling bodies out of the scene. And we saw lots of very distressed and shocked people. So clearly, we can say for ourselves, that there were people killed in this strike, and it was a residential area. We saw belongings, mattresses, clothes strewn around the streets, and there didn't seem to be any clear military targets in that zone either. Now, a short while after we were there, an advisor to the Azerbaijani president came to the scene and claimed that this rocket strike had come from within Armenia. Armenian authorities have strenuously denied that, but again, it's putting pressure on this notion of a truce here for the Nagorno-Karabakh region. We know there are reports of strikes on civilian targets inside Nagorno-Karabakh too, but here we certainly seen what looked very much like that situation in Ganja, Azerbaijan's second largest city.
And it does seem, Catherine, that this ceasefire was broken even before it really began.
Yeah, there were reports of firing on the day that the ceasefire, this humanitarian truce, was called. And I asked the advisor to the Azeri president whether his side had also been firing into Nagorno-Karabakh since the ceasefire began. And after a lot of questioning, he admitted that Azeri troops had also fired. He said in self-defense, he said limited military strikes on military targets. But again, acknowledging that Azerbaijan has also fired into Nagorno-Karabakh during this truce. And I asked him whether that meant that the ceasefire was, for all intents and purposes, over. And really interestingly, he was unwilling to come out and categorically say that off the cuff. So at the moment, it seems Azerbaijan want to point the finger of blame at Armenia and Armenian forces in Nagorno-Karabakh, but they don't want to be the ones to come out and say that the ceasefire is now finished. So clearly there's still a lot of bargaining and negotiating behind the scenes.
Catherine Norris-Trent, thank you very much. Now, the ongoing fighting over the Nagorno-Karabakh region has meant that concerns over the spread of COVID-19 in the region have taken a back seat. But residents and health experts fear the recent instability will only serve to exacerbate the pandemic. So far, Armenia has recorded more than 55,000 cases and over 1,000 deaths. Yinka Oyatade has the story.
This coronavirus ward is nearly packed to the brim. Hear the noise of ventilators, drown out the shelling going on outside. In Armenia, there are about 600 to 700 COVID cases a day. This is a worrying statistic for a country of just under 3 million inhabitants.
I
assume that the people are less vigilant now, since everyone's emotions and attention are turned towards the situation at the borders and our losses. It is worrying, as we have the second front, that used to be called the invisible enemy.
While many in Yerevan respect social distancing rules, some are worried that those displaced by the conflict won't be as careful.
We also have many people that came from Nagorno-Karabakh these days, and they may forget or ignore this issue because there are a lot worse things that they're dealing with right now.
This family was forced to leave their home in Agdam. They were tested while setting up camp here in a gym. There are worries that the epidemic will get worse, especially if negotiations fail.
Every year, France marks Pink October, a month set aside to raise awareness about breast cancer, the most common cancer here in France. Doctors say this year's campaign is more important than ever, with fears that thousands of women have been missing out on early diagnosis because of the pandemic. Alexandra Renard and James Wilson have more.
Every 2 years in France, women over the age of 50 are invited free of charge to be screened for breast cancer, something Rosalind has been doing for 10 years now.
Mon gynéco m'avait dit de faire mammo, du coup j'ai fait et c'est là qu'ils ont diagnostiqué cette fibrome. C'est bien de savoir où est-ce qu'on va, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire, si c'est pas trop tard surtout, pour être rassuré.
This time medics have decided a follow-up ultrasound is necessary. The Gustave Roussy Hospital is a leading institution in the fight against cancer, and it's concerned that women are putting off appointments because of coronavirus.
Alors dans le cadre du dépistage organisé, il y a un deuxième radiologue qui va regarder pour être certain qu'on passe à côté de rien.
Delay only makes a diagnosis worse. One patient waited half a year because of the pandemic.
Elle avait commencé à se palper une tuméfaction du sein avant la période du confinement. Et elle n'est venue que fin août. Donc là, on a une masse toute blanche ici, par comparaison avec l'autre côté, qui est une tumeur maligne du sein. Possiblement que le fait d'avoir attendu 6 mois ait favorisé le fait qu'elle fasse cette taille-là aujourd'hui. Et donc c'est sûr que le traitement aujourd'hui est assez important, c'est-à-dire chimiothérapie, plus une chirurgie, plus une radiothérapie. Donc c'est important de ne pas s'habituer à sentir quelque chose qui persiste, qui ne bouge pas selon le cycle et qui pourrait être une lésion suspecte du sein.
Every year, some 12,000 women in France die from breast cancer.
A reminder now of our top headlines. Donald Trump returns to the campaign trail in Florida as he insists he's now immune to COVID-19. His doctor, however, refusing to confirm whether or not the US president is now testing negative for the virus. Amid soaring rates of infection, Toulouse and Montpellier become the latest French cities to be designated the maximum COVID alert level, with bars and cafes ordered to close for 2 weeks as of Tuesday. And the EU urges Armenia and Azerbaijan to respect a Russia-brokered ceasefire, as each side accuses the other of shelling civilian targets.